Hey, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a good week so far. We're going to be hitting episode 4 of Mandalorian and episode 14 of Bad Batch.
Correct.
Episode 14 of Bad Batch as well. Our first kind of like filler episode in the Mandalorian season, but I thought it was highly entertaining. A lot of Star Wars fodder for fans in there.
Yes.
I thought that was intentional.
Star Wars fodder.
Before we get started, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason you can't get onto YouTube or just can't finish this on YouTube, don't forget we also have a podcast feed under Two Sons Podcast, wherever you guys get your podcasts. So we got to see Grogu's Order 66 moment.
Yes.
We got to see random Mandalorian combat. We got to see
Very random.
A battle party. I think he is what he called. I think that's what Paz Vizsla referred to the party to go meet the dragon. It was just a whole lot of Star Wars fodder for us.
Yeah, you're a Mando Phil, if you will. Like a lot of Mando stuff going on. Like the episode opens up with just like chaotic Mando training that has like no rhyme or reason.
Yeah, they're all kind of like on each other's business too.
Yeah, they're like flying around. Like some of them are just shooting across what looks to be Lake Powell. There's literally rockets just diving into the water for no good reason. There's a dude just on a zip line type thing, just barely at an incline. So like he's got like his tow rope that he's got, and he's just like hanging there, but it's like a 5-foot big, like tall rock, and it's completely unnecessary.
That's so
just like incredibly distracting in the background. It's so funny.
I thought that scene was at least 15% cheesy. At the beginning, you could see, like right as they're in the wide shot, you could see like a grown adult, like male Mandalorian, like going like this to like a mannequin, just like super slow speed. It was definitely more than a little bit. One dude's just like lobbing his grenade launcher into the lake, just like
it's just like gun range, but just they're not shooting at anything. And then there was another part that just kind of cracked me up. It'll come to me. I wish I thought.
Well, it just was like the other thing that I immediately thought was like, oh, this is a huge waste of ammunition.
That's exactly what I thought of. Have you ever seen the Office episode where they're into parkour and they're like parkour and they're just like running around aimlessly and just like jumping off couches and stuff like that? That's honestly what it reminded me of.
It was definitely like. Okay, so we see this Mandalorian covert several times over the course of the first 2.5 seasons, and
the Children of the Watch.
Boba Fett, the Children of the Watch,
specific.
And they're never actually doing anything.
They're usually. Whoa! I just lost my mind.
They're always just there. They're always just around, like kind of prepared to immediately engage in dialogue with Din Djarin. They're never like actively doing anything. So like it makes sense that they would kind of like go into what their daily life would be, which would be what you would expect from any sort of warrior society, which is we're going to
just shoot.
We're just going to
across oceans,
practice killing people. Yeah, and again, they're all like bounty hunters and stuff. So like when they're not out engaging in missions, it makes sense that they would be doing that.
Right.
But essentially, the reason the plot. The reason why I called it a filler episode is like it doesn't really advance anything other than maybe just a tiny bit one step forward on Bogoton's Mythosaur plotline.
Yes.
And then like there's one open-ended piece with the Grogu thing
with his chest
with
plate?
with the Jedi who rescued him.
Right.
So I think we should start there,
Clarion.
and then we can kind of get into like the filler. So like
really quick. I think it was more than a filler episode. Like overall, yes, it was a filler episode, but I think there was a lot of plot development, and we'll get into that. But I think Grogu developed a lot. Din Djarin develops a lot as like a father. And then also the Bogoton stuff.
Well, it certainly was a character development episode.
Yes,
I just mean in terms of like the core story of the season.
Yeah.
The two things that it advanced is there's some Jedi that we know that survived Order 66 who rescued Grogu, who's out there somewhere or died at a later date. And like straight up, Bogoton went to the blacksmith's the blacksmith and straight up told her like, I saw a mythosaur.
Dude,
She's
I
like,
know.
yeah, you'll see him.
You'll see a lot of things once you join the Children of the Watch. Like, what?
And then literally she's like, it was real. And then she was like,
This is the way.
And you're like,
I know. I think you're right. I think Bo-Katan's going to ride that bad boy.
Dude, it's clear that she's got her sights set on it because, you know, it was funny because she gets like straight up like bitch slapped by the dragon, just like boom. And like
in the
it
air.
starts flying down and then she loses her little shoulder piece that pops off. And I immediately was like, "Oh, we're getting a mythosaur on her shoulder." Like that was one of the few things
thought
that
it was
yeah,
gonna be a
immediately
mythosaur.
because I was like, "Why would she lose this random piece of armor if not
I
to do something like that?"
thought it was going to be a shriek hawk, and I was excited to see what the armor's artistic, piece would look like. Like for example, the Mudhorn looks dope.
Mm-hmm.
So I was excited to see what a shriek hawk.
I did think the same thing. I was like, it's going to be either the mythosaur or the shriek hawk.
Yeah.
Or I didn't know it was called a shriek hawk, but the dragon hawk bird.
Dude,
thing.
every good sci-fi has a dragon. You know that. That's a rule.
And 3 of them are now going to presumably to be domesticated by the covert and be ridden,
which is incredible. Like I am so excited.
You know what's going to happen, right? There's going to be some sort of epic final confrontation that involves Bo-Katan riding a mythosaur, 3 other Mandalorians riding big dragon shriek hawk birds, and going against like TIE interceptors and shit. Like that's going to happen.
Incredible. Mm-hmm. It's going to be so incredible.
Dude, like it was definitely and I will say this too. I cannot wait for the next time that we're in a room and there's a fireplace. And I get to go sit by it and say, like, I'm the leader of the battle party, therefore I have the honor of sitting by the fire. So that's Jon Favreau who voices. I'm pretty sure that's Jon Favreau who voices Paz Vizsla.
I see,
and he just he does such an epic job in that role. It's amazing.
While we're talking about the fire, let's talk about the rules of what is the Children of the Watch, because I'm definitely trying to get those figured out. Like first of all, in previous seasons, we see Din remove his helmet, which apparently was allowed to some capacity because he was on that one planet after he saved Grogu and he was eating and he sets his helmet to the side. Apparently that's allowed. Any other time when you're not eating, you can't have your helmet?
I actually remember him like drinking where he like kind of tipped up his helmet and like took a drink of water. Like in theory, you'd be able to do the same thing with food.
Right.
Like,
but dude, you got to wash your face. You got to wash your hair. Like that's just gross. And you got to get a haircut. None of those people have like super, super long hair.
Well, presumably they walk away from the group to do that kind of stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
But it does seem like a frighteningly inconvenient doctrine.
Yes. Like we just needed to address that. Also, it seemed very dangerous if it's such a big deal to have your helmet off in the presence of others. Like, okay, like everyone go off to your corners and like don't come back for 10 minutes or else you're going to see Bo-Katan's head.
And then like what happens if you accidentally see somebody? It's like, I got to go back to Mandalore again.
I know. But we need more water, so.
Yeah, it's like you remember to bring a bucket.
Yeah. Remember to bring a test tube because that's enough.
They just bring like a big like Home Depot 5-gallon bucket back and then like it's like you got to dunk your head in the bucket over there. It's like Din took his helmet off again. He's like,
it's just dirty, murky water. That's actually great. Dude, that's a great way. Just bring some water with you and then just bathe in the living waters of Mandalore.
Yeah, you bathe in the living waters. You, in theory, but then again, like the blacksmith has her own little thing.
That's true.
You know, there must be some sort of significance there.
Anyways, but that's just us being picky.
I thought that scene was really cool. They need to be more careful apparently with predators in this area.
Oh, just always getting picked off,
dude. Like
Lake Powell is a danger zone,
dude. And maybe that's why that specific. We were literally Luke and I were talking about this last night at dinner because I had just gotten into a random like rabbit hole with basically mass extinction events and the asteroid that killed all the dinosaurs and stuff, and basically this general idea that like the atmosphere had a certain set of characteristics that allowed for what they call megafauna, which are these massive living organisms. I think it's all 55 kilograms or bigger is what they consider to be megafauna. And like then the asteroid came and changed the fundamental like composition of the atmosphere, and they don't exist anymore. And like What's so interesting is like that's what I immediately thought of when I saw this planet is like, okay, the Mandalorian covert was like, we got to go to a planet where no one will hunt for us.
Yes.
Why don't we go? Like, and you just imagine the Star Wars universe. They're like looking around at all the planets and they're like, yeah, see, that's the one with all the dinosaurs. So like, we're gonna not go there.
Giant
we're gonna
dinosaurs.
go over here instead. But the Mandalorians are like, we'll fight the dinosaurs.
Well, and apparently it's been an issue in the past too with the whole entire Shriek-Hawk thing. They're like, they got another one, and we can never
Did
get
you see the helmets in the nest?
Yes,
dude.
Grab those.
Yeah.
Those have Beskar.
Yeah, perfectly good Beskar.
See, that's why it's so distracting for Jason and I to watch.
We're too
anything.
analytical.
I know. It's like, grab the Beskar helmets. That's valuable.
But they, the mission is a success. Paz Vizsla almost ruins it by like just basically bum rushing the dragon.
Yes.
And but of course he's an emotional father.
Yes.
Yes. But they succeed and they get back. The main second piece. Well, I wanted to, before we move on to that, I did think it was interesting just the general attitude that Bogoton had in the whole episode and the way she was treated during the whole episode. It seemed very much like she was buying in. And it's funny because one of the big debates that Luke and I had in the last episode is Bogoton joining the Watch or is she just there as a matter of convenience? And I still think that's an open-ended question.
Agreed.
But there's two things. One, we missed in our last episode just because we weren't paying attention because we're idiots, that the title of that episode was The Convert. So, which
good point.
And they do put a good amount of effort into what that title kind of signifies in the plot.
Yeah.
And so between that title from last week's episode and just Bo-Katan's behavior in this entire episode, I still think it's open-ended and who knows what's going to happen, but it does seem more and more like Bo-Katan is buying into or investing herself within that Children of the Watch.
Agreed. And I wonder if it's going to be like a, hey, join my efforts, or if she's going to try and dominate them in some way. It's super open-ended, like you had said. What were your thoughts on another Order 66 scene?
I'm always down for an Order 66 scene. I think I appreciated that they didn't overdo this one. It was kind of brief in a good way. Like it would have been so easy to just have like a 15-minute insane scene like that, but instead it was like, you saw a couple Jedi get cut down.
Yep.
It was kind of a good indicator too of the fact that like not all Jedi are ultra powerful, because like there was like 4 clone troopers who came through that first door and they immediately cut down 2 Jedi.
That's a really good point.
That. And I was like,
yeah.
But then again, you have to think like the Jedi Temple would be full of Jedi that are not necessarily amazingly powerful as or just don't specialize in combat.
That's actually a great point.
It's funny. I've been reading about this in the. Did you finish the High Republic book yet?
Not yet.
So I just finished it a few days ago, and what's funny is I already, just to kill time while I'm waiting for you, I got the first audiobook from the Darth Bane trilogy.
Oh.
And I'm already like he's already like training at the Sith Temple.
Is it a good audiobook?
It's so what's funny
the level
when
of like what we've been listening to.
What's the other guy's name? Do you remember? I can't remember his name.
The
guy who did the Thrawn books. Because you and I were joking. I'll look it up. You and I, because Luke and I were joking like he was a musician releasing a new album. We're like,
we're just his groupies.
His name is. Oh, this is gonna kill me.
Oh my gosh.
But that's so unfortunate. I'll have to look it up. But there's this dude who does all of the audiobooks for Thrawn. He's basically like, I think he's contracted as like the go-to dude who does all the adult books ever since Disney bought canon. And Luke and I will be like, oh, the new such and such just dropped, because he's like the new he's the
voice
same guy.
He's the voice of like the new Star Wars.
Yeah,
books.
and he does great.
He does fabulous.
So the guy who does Bane is very different, and specifically what I appreciate about the new guy, who I keep blanking his name, what I appreciate about the new guy is he puts a lot of effort into differing the accents of the characters. So it's really easy when you're listening to like kind of get a feel for who he's voicing.
Right.
But then in Darth Bane, like you can tell when Bane's talking, because Bane has a very specific voice and it's kind of like it is heavily accented. But everyone else kind of sounds the same.
Yeah.
And that can
Mark
get
someone?
Mark Thompson.
Mark
Yeah,
Thompson.
Brandy Mark Thompson just dropped.
Mark.
So like in Darth Bane, I was at first a little kind of off balance by his style, but now that I've made it into it a little bit and I've kind of picked up on his style, now I'm like just thoroughly enjoying it because I love Darth Bane.
It's an incredible book. We'll go into that next. Let's just do that.
Well, we gotta do the High Republic books that are out.
Yes, of course.
Because I want to hit them while they're new. But yeah, like in between those, while we're waiting for new books to release, we can get into Darth Bane because that just. It's literally, and there are a lot of like specific concepts within Darth Bane that translate very well to kind of the stuff that we're going to be covering
for sure
in other shows as well. So, but anyway, in that, in the
by the way, the book that we're reading right now is called Convergence. If anybody wants to do the audiobook with us, like we're going to try and probably do an episode on that probably within a week or two.
Relatively soon.
Yeah, it's called Convergence. You can get it through the Apple bookstore.
Yeah, I recommend the audiobooks.
Yeah, the audiobooks are incredible.
And they're way just like, because I'm sure, like, here's the thing. I haven't picked up a tangible book and read in a long time because I simply don't have the time. Like when I wake up and I have like, I have 2 hours here. Like I'm not going to read a book. I'm going to watch film because I need to
drive somewhere or
do something. Yeah,
pull weeds, like literally pulling weeds.
But you can listen to books while you're
exactly.
doing it. Yeah, bingo. So like, I highly recommend doing the audiobooks. But basically, there's the 3 High Republic books that came out in the last couple of years that covered kind of like the timeline to the Starlight Beacon, and they introduce you to the Nile, which is the big villain they're trying to build up from this era. Well, the first High Republic book in this second trilogy actually goes backwards 150 years, but it's kind of establishing some new norms, and there's a major connective piece that connects that. Did you get to the connective piece yet?
Okay. Which we won't talk about.
On
purpose,
yet. But there's a connective piece that kind of ties them into the future. So like it's super interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, the second book in that trilogy actually comes out this April. So it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround as we head into the next one.
A lot of good stuff.
But anyway, in that High Republic book that we just read, there's what were we talking about just before that? We were
Order 66.
Order 66. Yeah. Okay, so in that High Republic book, one of the main characters, she's contemplating throughout the book whether or not she wants to become a Jedi Wayseeker.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so apparently, like one of the things that the High Republic dives into, and you actually see this a little bit in the Darth Bane trilogy too, which is why I brought it up, is like the Old Republic stuff really dives into the different archetypes of Jedi. Mm-hmm. And there's like Jedi Masters, and there's Jedi Knights, and there's
librarians.
Yeah, but there's librarians. There's Wayfinders, which are like essentially Jedi that help lost Jedi. So like we saw this in the High Republic trilogy when I can't remember his name, but he ends up getting into some stuff with the dark side where he kind of taps into his anger a couple times. So he like disappears off to this beach planet and like hangs out with this chick who's like also a Jedi, but her specialty is like helping him get his shit together. Yeah. And then there's the Way Seekers, and like it's super interesting. Like they disconnect entirely from the Jedi. They are Jedi who operate under the Jedi code, but separate entirely from the Jedi as an entity. They're completely freelancers.
Yes.
They do not take an apprentice. They just travel the galaxy and like explore the Force. You know. So like what's cool about that is like
Jedi.
The Jedi Temple would be full of thousands of Jedi, and not all of them would be Obi-Wan Kenobi just messing dudes up with
a sword. Yeah,
exactly.
which explains why they got mowed over by your typical normie clone, right?
So they're getting mowed over, but then this dude comes in, and Master
Clarion,
yeah.
Clarion?
Yeah, so Master Clarion basically picks up a dead Jedi's lightsaber and just starts messing everybody up, and gets to the speeder, and takes him on this like chase through, and they get
through Coruscant, which was super cool.
And you saw the specific tunnel from the wide like 3-circle tunnel from Anakin and Obi-Wan's chase in Attack of the Clones, and finally we end up with a Nubian ship, full of Naboo guards, who willingly sacrificed their life to allow Grogu and this Jedi to escape. And I thought that was super interesting because Master Clarion straight up says, like, I've got a friend who can help us.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure he's referring to Padme.
You think it's Padme?
It has to be.
Not like, not Bail Organa or...
But Bail Organa would have provided Alderaanian ships and Alderaanian guards.
That's a really good point.
Like it was a Nubian ship.
It was a Nubian ship.
Like I would say that.
You think it's Padme?
I think Padme rescued Grogu.
That would be incredible.
I think that's
Jay, you're just doing some crazy stuff, and I love it. You're just
drawing lines.
You're
bro.
just getting freaky over here. No, that's why I love not talking about stuff until we're like actually on video, because that's actually a really cool point.
Yeah,
that'd be incredible.
And I actually get to finally have an observant thing, because Luke's the one that's always picking up the observant stuff.
Well, what I'll tell you is, if Padme did save him, she completely dropped the ball at some point, because he was abducted essentially by Din Djarin.
Yeah, exactly. There was some sort of handoff that got botched in there. Like somehow the baby, no, because remember the baby somehow ended up with a bunch of random bounty hunters.
Yes,
at one point, like,
and he was apparently there for a really long time.
Yeah,
because a bunch of bounty hunters had gone and just gotten their asses kicked.
And there was like 40 bounty hunters guarding him in this thing, which was ridiculous.
So we'll see if that develops at all.
What did you think of the Order 66 scene?
I thought it was tasteful. I thought it was super well done. I agree. I'm glad that they didn't just make it some completely over the top, ridiculous thing. Obviously, it really messed with Grogu. Like, Grogu was old enough to realize that was a really bad thing that was going on, because he was having some PTSD flashback type things that we saw Din Djarin go through as he was as the armorer was making his stuff, right? So like, it's this common theme apparently, where the armorer is making their gear for them, and then they're reminiscing on their past traumas essentially. And I don't know if that's just trying to draw parallels between Grogu and Din, or if that's something that's evoked for Mandalorians as they're getting their armor, or if that's part of their process, part of their tradition to meditate on as their pieces are being made. So
I think that's completely reasonable. Like that because I mean, we've seen that through every scene where she's making armor. Like there's an emotional connection to everything that they have. And honestly, we might just have to get Grogu on some physician-assisted psychedelics. I think that might do the trick for him.
He just gets super
Grogu just tripping balls on the table.
By the way, Grogu was going off on that little paintball battle that he had with his brother, and right.
It was so funny how he kept like looking up at Din, like,
am I allowed
he shot
to go?
Me. What's the deal? Shoot him back.
I know. But he does like 14 backflips again, and apparently is super athletic when he wants to be. But other times he's just scooting around in his little crib. By the way, I would spend a lot of money for that crib.
Dude, and apparently that crib has survived some shit, man.
Yes, that crib.
It appears to be the same crib that's made through the entire journey all the way through.
That crib is worth its weight.
Every person who obtained custody of Grogu was like, this thing is really convenient for moving him
we
around.
Are keeping the crib. Grogu comes with the crib, and we always keep that, no matter what.
It lost its paint job, though, unfortunately.
It lost its paint job. That was all my big stuff for The Mandalorian. Was that all yours?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all that happened. I mean, I'm really curious to see where it goes from here. There's going to have to be something that gets them to go off the rock. I would imagine that Bo-Katan will probably try to come up with some reason. Because you got to think from Mando's perspective, from Din's perspective, all he cared about was getting redeemed.
Yes.
And rejoining the covert. I think
that's true.
And I think he's and to your point about the dart battle, it seems to me his ultimate objective now is training Grogu to become a Mandalorian.
Yeah, his personal objective of getting cleansed has been fulfilled, and now he's being a papa. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
Bo-Katan definitely is not at peace chilling there.
No, and I highly doubt that Bo-Katan's just going to be like, all right, peace, Din. Like, I'm going to go save the galaxy. I think Din definitely has a lot more in the tank, and he just doesn't know it yet.
Do you think they'll leave the planet and find trouble, or do you think this mystery Moff will show up in pursuit of Bo-Katan?
That's a good point. I don't know, man. That's a 50-50 for me. I think it's a pretty good chance that actually the mystery Moff, who hopefully is not Thrawn, is gonna come and find them, because how else would they then use their baby little Shriek-Hawks? I think the Shriek-Hawks are pretty integral in a final battle of sorts.
I am convinced at this point that our mystery Moff is Gideon.
I would hope so.
I rewatched the episode from last week with my wife the other day.
Yeah.
And there's two specific things that kind of drive me in that direction. There's rumors floating around the New Republic that Gideon escaped. That was shared by the Amnesty G whatever kid sitting at the table. Mm-hmm. So that kind of like, I don't think that was coincidence. I don't think that was just tossed in there.
Yeah.
Especially since he would have been accounted for. Like there would be no rumor if he was very clearly detained, you know?
I see.
Or standing trial or something along those lines. And then the second thing was that chick who screws over the doctor. If you watch I think it was that very episode in the intro when they're kind of doing like what happened previously on or whatever. She was very committed to Gideon.
Yes,
she was a Gideon loyalist, and so like her whole vibe and everything she's doing, she's a Gideonite. Yeah, a Gideonite, if you will. I think it's pretty clear that she's still operating as a shadow operative for Gideon, and Gideon probably escaped. It explains his resources compared to some of the other Moffs. Like to me, that's going to be the direction. And also, the dude who plays Gideon is just like such a great.
Jason's like, he's got a great face. He needs to be on camera. I need to see this man. Jason loves a good face.
Hey, dude, I enjoy good actors and actresses.
Yeah, of course.
And actually, it's lame when we hide their face for some weird plot device.
Agreed. We had a great comment. I don't know if you saw on our last video about like a theory of what's going on with Gideon and whether or not that girl was, you know, a sleeper cell or if she's actually part of the New Republic. It was by a commenter, I think Carrie. Thanks for the comment. And she had a really good take on why she fried the scientist's brain, and I think it was along the lines of he's no longer a loyalist to the Empire, and essentially he's a loose end, so they fried his brain.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing that comment about tying off loose ends. I thought that was super interesting too, and I think
it makes total sense.
And he has information about Gideon that they don't trust, and I think one of the big things too is like, I think the opening scene in that show, when they shift gears to the Dr. Pershing, is he's giving a speech in front of the entire Republic.
His little TED Talk.
And it's possible that when he talks about the selfish individual, he's not referring to Palpatine, he's actually referring to Gideon.
True.
But like essentially, like she walks in and kind of like twiddles her little thing, and like she actually like touches her little like
that's true,
her little badge, and like goes to, which kind of like signifies that it might be even potentially fraudulent. And she works her way down, sits down, and watches the speech. So it could be that her entire,
she was like in a completely different getup and just threw something else on really quick just to gain access.
It could have The
other thing is it could be like a listening device. Not that she'd have to have a listening device because it's literally being broadcasted across the entire galaxy. But hey.
Yeah, that was a bad take, Luke.
Yeah, that was a bad take. I'm just kidding. Did not think that one through.
Well, I think the loose end thing makes some sense to me. Like she kind of picked his brain enough times to find out that he's kind of too much of a moral compass guy, and not enough of like a ruthless guy.
Which we had seen in season 1 of The Mandalorian. Like he was actually legitimately scared when they were talking about just getting the baby at that point. We didn't know it was Grogu. And
because he didn't want the baby to get hurt.
He didn't want the baby to get hurt. Yeah, he was like, no, like we decided that we were going to get him when he's alive because the other Moff was like dead or alive. We just need his blood.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, just like really good long-term writing where you have a character that's being developed that everyone watching the episodes doesn't even know he's a big deal, doesn't even know he's being developed for seasons down the road. And
you mean to tell me that they had a vision and a plan for the Mandalorian?
Dude, what an incredible idea that is. Oh my gosh, like I mean, maybe they should always do that.
Yeah, like maybe think about the big picture of how you plan on the show ending. That's kind of an interesting
Jason
concept.
And I low-key talking trash about episodes 7, 8, and 9 of the movies and how they had zero plan.
It's not low-key, Luke. It's high-key.
Everyone knows now that we hate them.
So we get I thought the best episode of Bad Batch in a while.
Yep.
We have a cool space battle where
really cool.
Yeah, where what's his name? Not Tech. Echo.
Mm-hmm.
Echo leads an extraction mission to rescue a couple of clones.
Really quick on that space battle was really cool because their ship was outfitted with like a side pod that was exceedingly mobile.
Oh
right?
yeah,
and
I love the little jets and shit that would fire when it was like maneuvering.
Yeah, so it was almost like an escape pod that they had fitted to actually be very usable during what was a battle. And it reminded me, it was reminiscent of the types of battles that we see in Thrawn, where it was like very calculated and like very interesting and like a true movement of chess pieces, right? Like you have two chess pieces, which is the main ship that everyone was in, and then the side ship that they used to like connect to the top of the Imperial ship.
Yeah, let's break it down. So they come out of hyperspace in close range and immediately use ion cannons to disable the hyperdrive.
Yes, which was incredibly efficient because they didn't have shields up.
Then they proceed to attack their weapons clusters and disable their weapons. Very Thrawn.
Thrawn.
They must be Thrawnanites. The boarding party. What I looked at that extra pod thing is it seemed kind of like a pincer type of maneuver.
Yeah.
Because when the main ship docks from the bottom and the top ship docks from the top, and it actually like claws into the ship and like creates like a new opening. And there's actually a moment where like the stormtroopers that are running through the ship are like running to one specific door, and then they hear a sound from another side, and then like two of them jet off and go that way. So they're like coming through at all these different angles, and there's a point where they get into some trouble, and there's that trap door that's opening where they lob the grenade up, but then like more clones come through like a different entrances. So it was just like a very, very detailed extraction mission that was really, really well done. We got to see kind of like a vintage capital ship and vintage TIE fighters from the Old Republic, and it was all very, very cool. But essentially the idea there is this secret mission, which by the way we see a clone commando and yet another commander who commits suicide by biting down on his tooth thing to like immediately shock his brain to death or something. And he refers to a set of protocols they have for that specific instance, and they take those clones back to go see the Bad Batch. And essentially, we find out that there's kind of like an order of operations here. We have Moff Tarkin, who's in charge of. Do you know what the other guy's name is?
Dr. Hemlock.
Dr. Hemlock is the guy who's leading this like clone operation,
which they had started calling the Advanced Science Division.
Advanced Science Division. That's super interesting.
Yes.
So, but then Moff Tarkin's like, "Hey, this ship got attacked. What's the deal?" And he goes like, "Well, we have protocols in place, so we're fine. Everything's fine.
Various protocols in place.
Yes, which is obviously them wiping the data and the dude killing himself. But then he goes like, well, we got a bigger concern. Like, how are they finding out? And then we find out from Echo that they've got like moles within the Empire, within clones that are still working while they're feeding them information. It was a very, very detailed episode, kind of breaking down the dynamics of that like clone rebellion versus the Empire itself. And I really appreciated the detail they went into just kind of explaining that, because they're building towards something in Bad Batch that feels important.
Yes.
They are obviously the Advanced Sciences Division is going after Omega for the purposes of appeasing the Kaminoans.
And they wanted just clones in general. It seems like they're bringing clones there for some reason.
Specifically clones that have rebelled. It seems like, because essentially Moff Tarkin is like, oh well, we're seeking them out and we're getting rid of them or something, and like the Dr. Hemlock is kind of like, well, that's not good enough. You need to send them to me, and he kind of pitches this idea that he has, and then Moff Tarkin is like, well, bring me that idea when we go through our briefing in this other session thing. So like he clearly has some plan for what to do with all these old clones, and then he's torturing Crosshair to try to get the location of the clones, which obviously he can't. But then they send out a distress call. But it's clear that the Bad Batch doesn't necessarily trust Crosshair enough to appreciate this distress call for what it is.
And it's clear now that Crosshair is completely bought into the fact that the Empire absolutely stinks, and he's completely over it and ready to essentially sacrifice himself if needed in order to no longer be part of the Empire.
But he helped them at the end of season 1, right?
Crosshair he did. Yes, yeah.
So there's some reason to think that he might be legitimate in their efforts. In his efforts to help.
No, he did help them, mainly because they also saved his life. Kind of like they got out of the Kamino base that was being flooded together, essentially.
Yeah.
Crosshair is such a cool character. Like I'm so excited to see where he ends up, and I hope so badly that he ends up being like a champion of goodness, like
good soldiers follow orders.
Yes. Jason and I joke around because Crosshair and our buddy Marcus, whom you guys will meet at some point, I'm sure, in other media, look exactly the same. Like they're the same human being.
They have the similar vibes. Yeah.
It is stunning how similar they look. But yeah, so Crosshair is completely bought in. It sounds like we also get to see Senator Chuchi again and her continued quest to help the clones.
Dude, she's gonna die, man. I was thinking about that the whole time I was seeing her. I was like, Palpatine's gonna kill this girl so fast.
And then
tragic train accident.
They were like really they made a point to say clones' names. So I did a little bit of research back on some of the clones that they named. So they named Nemec, they named Fireball, they named Hauser, and then I don't know if you noticed, but Gregor, who's one of my all-time favorite clones.
Gregor, who's hanging out with Rex in Rebels, yeah.
Yeah, Gregor's a clone commando, but Hauser.
Gregor was a commando?
Yeah, he was Hauser actually was a huge part in one of the previous Bad Batch seasons when we see Hera. So I don't know if you remember this or not, but
when Hera was a baby, right?
When she was like a teen, essentially, and she's creating havoc on what's their homeworld? Oh my gosh, what's
Ryloth?
Ryloth, and the Bad Batch goes to try and help out Ryloth, and then throughout the episode, Hauser slowly makes his progression to hating the Empire as well. And actually, at the last time that we see him, he actually tells the Batch like they're about to go out this door, and he's like, "Hey, don't go out that door. There's like a battalion of clones waiting for you guys." He essentially sacrifices himself. They go out a different way, and then the doors open up, and Hauser goes out and starts addressing his fellow brothers, the clones, and he's like, "Hey, like, you know, we're no longer doing good," essentially is his speech. And then a couple clones drop their shields and stand by him, and then they immediately get detained. And that's the last that we see of him. So it was really cool to see them reuse characters that have been important for the rebellion in the past.
Star Wars has really done an interesting job of pulling interesting storylines out of the clones.
Yeah.
And like the sheer level of character development within what effectively amounts to the same person, the same voice. Like I was literally thinking about that today because there was a conversation between Hunter and Tech. And I was like, it's so interesting seeing that, or as Hunter and Echo. And I was like, man, like they literally sound exactly the same. Like it's so interesting, like what the voice acting must be like for that. But it just works because they've built out these storylines, and it really is interesting. It's interesting to think about, like, well, clones, like they have a lot of these advantages that droids don't have, but at the end of the day, they're humans. Like they have feelings and emotions and free will, and so they have a certain amount of like other like fallout or side effects that come with using them as soldiers, and you're kind of seeing that all bear out in this show. But like it essentially, the episode ends with it ends with Crosshair getting tortured again and that kind of thing. But essentially, the way the storyline of the episode wraps up is they're trying to figure out what to do now that they know that Crosshair sent this distress call.
Right.
My guess is that they're going to actually try to go rescue Crosshair.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think even just from an interest standpoint for viewers and for plot development, I think they're going to go and make contact with Crosshair.
I'd rather
not
have
just
that
gonna
than
be
Sid sell them out too.
Yes. Or they'll just be like, yeah, Crosshair seems to be in trouble. Let's go fishing.
Yeah, like, I guess we'll just leave him. Like, and it just kind of goes against everything in their character development too. Yeah. And like, it's also the easiest way for them to tie off that loose end is like, okay, is Crosshair being honest? Well, we need to go save him, because if we save him, like if he's working against us, obviously we'll be able to neutralize that problem. If he's working with us, then obviously we can determine what our next course of action is. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah. Crosshair being a part of Clone Force 99 again would be incredible. Mm-hmm. They'd be a force to be reckoned with. Not that they already aren't, you know. The last part that I thought was super cool was Omega and her starship flying abilities.
A little reckless, man.
She's a little bit reckless, but I've got to say, I really enjoyed that scene. I
was wondering if she was going to be a force sensitive.
Oh,
but when she was flying like that and doing that kind of crazy thing, I was just like, just for a second, I was like, but then I was like, actually, the whole Clone Wars thing kind of tries to avoid the force as much as possible. So they do. Yeah. So I watched that episode of Bad Batch at like 2 a.m.
little G-Man got up and needed a little diaper change and a feed.
So, for those of you who missed last week, Luke is still hardcore living the dad life now.
Going into week 2 of being a papa. It's awesome. I highly recommend. But yeah, sleep is an issue for sure.
He's like mainly for the sex, but the dad part's also good.
Being a dad is also great. But yeah, we're watching that like 2 a.m. him and I. Of course, he has no clue what's going on. He's just all about the milk.
Sure?
And but I've got to say that put a smile on my face seeing Omega fly around in that ship with Tech. I thought that was a really cool touch.
Bad Batch has gotten me to care about the characters, which was something I was worried they wouldn't be able to do.
You kind of went into Bad Batch. I'm going to put you on blast. You had a little chip on your shoulder. You're a little bit disinterested in the batch, and now you're a batch member.
Batchman. There's two things that kind of drove that. One, I like big picture storylines that involve the Force, which
apparently should involve the Force. I see.
Well, yeah, but then
this is the development of cloning.
I also had like a general annoyance with Disney's obsession with like squeezing every last drop of story out of this specific timeline.
Yes.
But I'll just admit it, I was wrong. Like, it's good. I enjoy it.
Good.
I look forward to the next episode of Bad Batch.
Awesome.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys next week for 2 more episodes of Mandalorian and Bad Batch.
Thanks a lot.